If you're chugging through life in a job you kind of dislike, in a relationship you are detached from, eating to cope, staring at Facebook, smoking, and fruitlessly fantasizing, you can sit glumly on that conveyor belt of unconscious discontent until it deposits you in your grave. Sounds like a good book to me. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome. My name is Eva, master's level professional in the field of psychology, author, and international book coach. And today we are talking about Mr. Russell Brand's book, one of several books he's penned. This one is Recovery, Freedom from Our Addictions. So if you do not know who Russell Brand is, he's an actor, a comedian, a yogi, a philanthropist. He talks about social issues. He's a podcaster, a YouTuber, and I've been following him for about the last few months or so. And I like some of the viewpoints that he presents to us. I don't necessarily agree with everything, but he explained that he had several different books, so I decided to check this one out. And according to him, he was addicted to many things: food, alcohol, drugs, all sorts of things. Now, if you decide to read this book, I will give you a warning that there is a lot of harsh language in here. It's definitely not for children. You might get queued up if you are a person recovering from addiction, because he does use some personal stories and detailed accounts of some of the substance abuse he sort of went through over the course of his life, but very valuable nonetheless. Now, how does a person go from this to this?
It's me, Russell. Let's do a Kundalini meditation exercise together. I don't know if you know this, but I'm not a qualified Kundalini teacher.
It takes 12 steps. So he details how he goes through the program, and I sort of extract some of the best lines from the book from my point of view, and just to share them with you and see what you think about them. So in no particular order, let's jump right in. Now, there are 13 chapters in this book, and the first one is entitled, Are You a Bit? I told you there was lots of swearing. This is complicated only in that most of us are quite divided. Usually the parts of us want to change a negative and punishing behavior, whereas another part wants to hold on to it. For me, recovery is a journey from a lack of awareness to awareness.
So what it's like to be a drug addict is to live in the problem of your psyche, to live in the problem of your emotions. What it's like to be in recovery is to face those problems head on and look for solutions beyond drugs, because drugs, as we all know, don't work ultimately anyway.
The glorious point of self-reflection. Now, some of us want absolutely nothing to do with self-reflection or self-awareness. I know that. But for those of us who do, he writes, considering the fact that you want to change this relationship, this job, or how you interact with food, but there is a part of us that engages in the behavior in the first place, find some comfort in it. So the first step in our awareness, how willing are we to make the change? We have to be honest with ourselves. Good point, Russell. Chapter 2, Could You Not Be? I told you there was lots of swearing in this book. Now, on page 39, the good Russ writes, It is normal to expect this kind of admission will come as a blow to the ego. It is our ego who, up until now, has been running the show with a bit of help from whatever behavior or substance we've been forced to accept is the problem. After I admitted I had a problem, I felt weak and pathetic. I felt cracked.
By the time you've realised that the consequences of your drug use are worse than the consequences of a life where you don't have an anesthetic or distractions or pleasure stimulation and the things that crack and heroin in particular can provide for you, by that time you're physically dependent, and the idea of change, you don't feel like you have any hope.
So our ego is running the show. That is a pretty significant statement. And it takes an incredible amount of humility to admit that we have a problem and that something should be done about that problem. Because we all like to feel like we have some bit of control, that we could say no if we wanted to, but coming to the realization that we can't can be heart-wrenching. Another good one, Russ. Chapter 3, are you on your own going to yourself? On page 55, the good Russ writes, the stimulus-response relationship between me, myself, and the world was like this. I'm lonely, have sex. I'm sad, get drunk. I'm bored, eat cake. It probably wasn't even that articulate.
All those drugs, I remember the process was always, I'm going to do this all the time. Every time I took a new drug, I'm going to do this all the time. Like, weird, I'm doing that all the time now.
So here Russell Brand points out that much of addiction has to do with filling a void. We either want to numb out a pain we don't want to feel, we want to hide it or mask it, or we want to boost or elevate our mood to levels that they might not ordinarily get to make us feel bolder, more powerful, more funny, or better able to deal with situations, right? So when you remove that addiction, what happens? Are you on your own going to be able to make changes without any outside help? Chapter 4, for those of you who dare, write down all the things that are your life up or have ever your life up, and don't lie or leave anything out. On page 69, the lines that stood out to me were as follows. We have to let go of our opinion of how other people, places, and things ought to be. My mom, my girlfriend Laura, and the government of North Korea are not obligated to moderate their reality in accordance with my whims. If I make my happiness contingent on them behaving in a certain way, I am. Now, this one, of course, is a major point. How often have we tied our happiness to a person or place or a thing, and if one can't get that thing or one can't get that person to behave how we want to, it affects our mood, our behavior, our actions. We need to take a step back and have a drink or have a smoke or what have you. So how can you cope when things aren't quite going your way? This is something that you have to sort of prepare in advance for and learn to cope ahead in order to avoid situations that might end or might wind you back or land you back in a situation where you don't want to be. Now let's jump a little bit ahead to chapter 9, which is entitled, Now Apologize, unless it would make things worse. So don't go copping anything that could land you behind bars. On page 150, he writes, so many of us are encumbered with fear and shame. These feelings are affirmed if we can't go out into the world without running into wounded people who understandably regard us unfavorably.
I have a propensity to return to states of shame. You know, I have that in me. It's easily triggered in me. It's easily triggered.
So this one stands out to me because these are unpleasant emotions: guilt, shame, mistrust, frustration. These are things that people try really hard to avoid, and in avoidance they can turn to whatever their addictions happen to be. So you need to address these unpleasant emotions in order to move forward. And if that means coming to terms with or having an understanding with somebody who generates these feelings within you, or sort of cues up a time in the past or a time in when, it's a good idea to address those in some cases. In chapter 12, we get sort of this resolution. Just like any good book, the happiness comes in the end, the wrapping up of the story. Russell Brand writes on page 213, "So, having had a spiritual awakening, that means you've woken up to the reality that you and your thoughts are not the center of the universe. They are not even true, and if they are not making you happy, it's time to let them go to make room for new thoughts."
And I believe this to be true of all drug addicts. You are looking for a spiritual dimension to your life. By spiritual, I mean a strong emotional connection, a sense of awareness, purpose, and connection.
So here it is. It's not just about us and what we might be experiencing internally. We have to come out of ourselves and rediscover the things that we really enjoyed, the people that we really enjoyed prior to our addictions taking hold of us. And this can be exciting and reinvigorating. Of course, if we go through the steps, get the support we need, and are honest with ourselves. Now, I highly recommend that you go out and grab this book. It certainly gets the stamp of approval from Eva's writing vault. So let me know what books you're interested in, what lines you want to maybe discuss. Let me know. I'll be happy to review more books. All right. Until next time, be happy and confident speakers and writers.